ar-condicionado?
Tá com barulho, tá fazendo barulho.
Boa tarde, boa noite, né, a todos e todas. Good evening, everyone. It's hot, I know. We spent some time here, and that's why one of the reasons we are late is that we are trying to see if the air conditioning can sort of balance, because it's either freezing or not air conditioning at all. So now it's very hot. I can see people are using their programs instead. But hopefully it will be better. I hope in a few moments. I start this with the proverbial acknowledgement, and I'd like to thank UFSCar, the Universidade Federal de São Carlos, for the invitation, but especially for the core of four professors, the core group of organizers here, who are Luciana Araújo, Samuel Paiva, Flavius is in Portugal, thanks for the introduction, Susana Miranda, and Margarida Adamati. I would also like to address a special thank to Luciana G, which I think it's, can be considered, let's say, the heart of this amazing project. A long-time friend and collaborator, and also to be thanked here in the group is the group of graduate students who besides being all very nice, they have been extremely helpful, and I think they add a lot to our feeling of being welcome here in São Carlos. But I'm especially happy to be here and honored also to be here as a keynote speaker and witness what I knew some 8 years ago when I was also invited to deliver the opening lecture of this promising program. This was in 2008. I knew then that this program would soon be a reference for Brazilian cinema film studies, and I'm emphasizing Brazilian cinema here. And now, another truth that I always like to mention whenever I'm here is the inclusion of the University of Reading as another member of an already very famous group. And that group I usually name the Off-Broadway Academic Net. That means Niterói, São Carlos, and now Reading in the UK. So until now, we had only 2 participants, UF and UFSCar. So a warm welcome to Reading, to the group of the Off-Broadway Academic Circle. Circle is, I think, it's more interesting, more, let's say, the circle, the Off-Broadway Circle of scholars in Brazilian cinema. What I did last night is to shorten this presentation. It will be shorter than the other 2 keynote speeches we have had here, because I want to have more time to discussion. I hope we'll have, which I started already at the previous panel, in the other theater, and add some ideas and hopefully open up new branches of research, as I have already mentioned there. The last thing, before we actually begin, is that I realized this morning, after the session this morning, is that on its second day today, we could already see how all the presentations are interconnected, and some important links have already been established among different papers presented, which I think is a sign of an excellent and very strong curatorial work. So now let's go and let's come straight to the presentation. It's entitled Chanchada, Samba, and Beyond, from the cinema of radio to the cinema of television, 1930, 1960. There is a time frame here. And following this suggestion proposed by this timely symposium. The research in progress I'll be presenting here will address the role of Brazilian popular music, especially of some generic samba forms, as their adaptations were transformed through a double process of cross-mediation, as cinema reconfigured music in their staged environments of production, representation, and consumption, such as radio auditoriums, casino stages, nightclubs, stages also in nightclubs, and other spaces that position diegetic audiences within their narratives. The forms of the negotiation between Brazilian cinema and television will be investigated from the moment synchronized sound was first used in Brazilian cinema until the late 50s, when gradually television became the most popular form of audiovisual contact with Brazilian audiences. Traditionally, in the history of Brazilian cinema, there is a critical tendency to affirm, to claim the submission of comedy to the radio, as seen in the film musical, just one word, of the 30s and the chanchadas of the 40s and 50s. The same derivative trope has been currently repeated in regard to television. Cinema de televisão is something that's not well evaluated, or something that, let's say, like a bad object. Cinema de televisão, a cinema of television. To justify the popularity of what has been defined also as neo-chanchadas or global chanchadas, which brings a connection of this more recent comedies that were produced or partly produced by the global network. But the question, since its beginning, hasn't cinema always been derivative? Hasn't it inherited, absorbed, shaped its forms, and became all too popular amidst, among other venues, amusement parks, circus, theater, and we could name and add a few other venues? The intention here is to investigate the various interrelations of cinema, especially centered in Brazilian comedies, in its cross-media connections with radio, the stage of the casinos and theaters, cinema itself, cinema with cinema, and finally television. The temporal frame encompassed the early 30s with the arrival of sound up to the late 50s, when traditionally chanchadas slowly gave way to other forms of Brazilian film, including the then aesthetic and thematic renovation brought by Cinema Novo. We can have renovations in the plural as well. And it's also important, as probably, I think most of you know, to remember here that chanchadas still had a longer life than previously thought, and the genre survived until the mid-60s, during the height of the more progressive and revolutionary films of the cinema. Just two examples. Pistoleiro, Bossa Nova, e Os Cosmonautas, for example, films that were done in the mid-60s, around the mid-60s. Now I want to be sorry, for example, for those colleagues here who know this story very well. But I think in respect and consideration for our international guests, especially those not familiar with Brazilian film history, some background might be of relevance here so that we can better understand what will be discussed and analyzed here. I'm sure that when tomorrow, and when this symposium ends tomorrow, we could give like small diplomas for the foreign guests so that they are now very well informed about chanchadas, chanchada specialists in their own country. I hope. So, after a brief period of high visibility within its burgeoning internal market, known to some Brazilian film historians as the Bela Época golden age of Brazilian cinema, according to scholars such as José Inácio de Melo Souza, Jean-Claude Bernardet, or before them, Vicente de Paulo Araújo, who coined this name. After that period, Brazil lost that privilege to Hollywood, which consolidated its domination during and after World War First World War. When they mention Bela Época, especially Vicente de Paulo Araújo, it's very hard to really define. They talk about something between 1908 and 1911, but it's kind of flexible, as usually those time frames are. For years to come, after the end of the First World War, Latin America became a major consumer market with Hollywood, providing most of its film entertainment. As throughout other countries in the continent, Latin American filmmakers had to wait for the coming of sound in order to create their own sound national cinemas. As elsewhere and slowly, the cinema came to be equated with classical Hollywood fiction film, something that has been argued by Luciano Gibi, for example, another very important and seminal essay. Posited as a kind of universal language and internalized to some extent and not entirely by filmmakers, exhibitors, and spectators alike. But of course, not without complex degrees of negotiation and resistance. In the face of foreign domination, the visible presence of Brazilian cinema was guaranteed in the post-sound era, mainly by the continuous production of musical comedies. In the 30s, the first film musicais made at the Cinemídia studios or at Sono Filmes, among some other less notorious production companies. Those first film musicais were later to be pejoratively known as chanchada. So far, the most popular genre ever produced in Brazil, and I claim here as the only true genre developed and consolidated in Brazilian cinema. I'm thinking, when I talk about this, I'm thinking in terms of what Professor Rick Alton defined as film genre, for example. A derogatory epithet created by hostile mainstream film critics, as Rafael de Luna Freire mentioned this morning. Chanchada refers to a body of films made between the mid-30s and continuing in modified form up to the early to mid-60s, featuring predominantly comic plots interspersed with musical numbers that, with very few exceptions, disrupted the coherence and predictability of the narrative world. The first dominant mode of the musical genre in Brazilian cinema throughout the 30s was the review film, resembling the North American backstage musical, in which the narrative trajectory centered on the preparation of either a radio or a stage show. The chanchada was then, from its inception, intimately linked to the world of the radio and the then promising and ever-growing record phonographic industry. And I'm quoting again Rafael this morning, who had this very nice, it's hard to pronounce, but I love it, gramophone radio mania, gramophone radio mania. Now I said it quickly. Two titles of classic film musicals from the beginning of the sound period in Brazilian cinema acknowledge the presence and recognize the debt to radio. Again, sorry for our Brazilian colleagues that know this story by heart, but they are the proto-chanchadas. Alô, Alô, Brasil, Wallace Tony, João de Barro e Alberto Ribeiro, 1935, and Alô, Alô, Carnaval, Ademar Gonzaga, 1936. Both, as we shall see, in their titles, this is very interesting, their titles allude to the common salutation by radio speakers to the carnival revelers, and not only to the carnival revelers. The beginning of many radio transmissions would become "allo, allo," as if they were talking on the phone, something like that. But even those chanchadas not marked by the diegetic presence of carnival are still linked to the large universe of carnival, in that they incorporate the social inversions typical of carnival and develop, like carnival itself, an implicit social critique to Brazilian society, projecting a world whose utopian horizon was upside down. Quoting here the seminal argument by Richard Dyer, according to the belief and desire that one day Brazil would be a nice and better place to live. Through culture, music to be more precise, popular desire contaminated the genre. Also the presence on screen of marginal characters, marginalized, drawn from daily urban life, paralleled the physical incorporation of the urban masses into the movie theaters themselves. During 3 consecutive decades, 30s to the 50s, an immense public was being dislocated from the countryside to the big cities, pushed by the nationalist wave of industrialization pioneered by President Getúlio Vargas in the early 30s, and later extended through the developmentalist programs carried out by President Juscelino Kubitschek in the 50s. It was also a time when going to the movies was really a democratic habit, thanks to the proliferation of movie theaters providing cheap entertainment to all audiences across this immense country. The chanchadas succeeded in constructing a powerful imaginary for the working class, who could look at the elite with disdain, for they were seen in their sophistication and cosmopolitanism as signs of domination. Therefore, they were also the object of parody and laughter. The discourse of a carnivalized text forms an apt instrument for the investigation of Brazilian cinema, especially in its musical forms, since from its inception it was impregnated by values associated with carnival. The forms of this carnivalesque presence range from the pro-filmic incorporation of actual carnival activities, parades, music and dance, a feature of the first vistas at the turn of the century, up to Glauber Rocha's revolutionary Cinema Novo, albeit in a completely radical shift, as for example in his Land in Anguish, Terra em Trânsito, 1967, or in his last feature, A Idade da Terra, The Age of the Earth, 1980, and more diffuse allusions via music and costume. Also the use of strategies of inversion unaccompanied by any direct allusion to carnival, also free from any direct allusion to carnival. It is worth noting that the very word carnaval, figures prominently in the titles of a disproportionate number of films from early views such as O Carnaval de 1908, the 1908 Carnival, through the annual series of Carnavais Cantados, singing films, the sung carnivals, which made annual appearances on Brazilian screens after 1919. More than a strong cultural presence, the different shapes of the carnivalesque discourse in form, define, structure, and name an array of musical films and chanchadas from the sound era, such as, again, Hello, Hello Carnaval, Allo, Allo Carnaval, to, you name a few. Carnaval no Fogo, Carnival in Flames, Watson Macedo, 1949. Carnaval Atlântida, José Carlos Burle, 1952. Carnaval em Caxias, Paulo Vanderlei, 1953. Carnaval em Lá Maior, Carnival in A Flat, Gonzaga, 1955. Carnaval em Marte, Watson Macedo, Carnival in Mars, Watson Macedo, 1955. Depois do Carnaval, After the Carnival, Wilson Silva, 1959. Carnaval Barra Limpa, J.B. Tampo, 1967. See, another one of those late. We call it a late chanchada. And all the way reaching Cinema Novo, as in When Carnival Comes, quando o Carnaval chegar. And if we go through a more recent a more recent cycle of the explicit sex films, porno films, you can have a lot of carnavals in their titles. O Carnaval da Suruba, o Carnaval do Sexo, there is a lot. There are a lot, some combinations you can find that use this idea of carnival in their titles. A vast proportion of the musical films we are discussing here, I'm mentioning here, referring here, were not only released at carnival times, but were also designed to promote carnival songs. Some were designated as if in anticipation of a Bakhtinian analysis, filmes carnavalescos, carnivalesque films. The first successful sound film shown in Rio de Janeiro was Broadway Melody, Harry Beaumont, 1929. We saw about this. We heard about this also this morning in Rafael's presentation. That film premiered at the Palace Theatre, St. Palácio, in the downtown district called Cinemídia in June 1929. It presented Brazilians with a lively portrait of the New York backstage with a simple narrative as pretext to introduce several musical numbers. However, it instantly became a matrix to try out an adaptation to the local context, seizing upon the broad traditions of the Brazilian burlesque, the review, the circus, and both the popularity of radio and the then new promising record industry, which were just beginning. This film inspired what is considered to be the first commercially successful Brazilian talkie, Our Things, Coisas Nossas, by Wallace Downey, 1931. We heard about, I would be talking about this, but we've heard enough about our Coisas Nossas already. But it's another matrix on its own way for establishing the interaction between cinema and popular Brazilian music. Downey, a Columbia Record Company executive, was sent to Brazil in 1928 to identify business opportunities in the country's fertile musical scene, and perhaps by accident ended up by introducing what has become a key feature of the chanson, which is parody. In Our Things, Downey presented a man singing in the shower, mimicking the song Singing in the Rain, performed by Cliff Edwards in the Hollywood Review of 1929. A hit at that time. I have to look for this record because I'm not sure if that was sang by Paraguaçu. I have to check that. I don't know if anyone of you know.
Não, Paraguaçu não.
No.
Era o Zezinho. Zezinho.
Zezinho. Our Things also made the pages of Cinemídia, a film magazine, which ran from 1926 until 1942, which was modeled on the US magazine Photoplay in terms of both content and format. An ad in Cinemídia boasted the patriotic pride associated with the production of native cinema. Our customs, our music, our songs, our artisans. a Brazilian film, a talkie, a musical made here in Brazil. Though produced in São Paulo, it was in Rio, however, that the musical films would thrive. Then not only the country's capital, but a mecca for the burgeoning music and film industries. Sound simultaneously permitted the showcasing on film of singers already popular with the public and the recording industry of the rich heritage of samba, sometimes already recreated in an impure form, or even transgeneric in their mixture with other rhythms such as marchinhas, baiões, frevos, sambas canção, among others related or not to the universe of carnival. Whether to overtake foreign competition or as an aesthetic proposition, the union of cinema with Brazilian popular music during the 30s, 40s, and 50s was a guarantee of the regular presence and survival of Brazilian cinema in its own market. In this sense, we can actually claim that what we are referring to here is first and foremost a cinema of the radio, a radio cinema, and in a lesser scale, a pioneer cinema of the casinos, nightclubs, and vaudeville and review spectacles. Cinemídia, a pioneering studio, actually the one considered the first film studio in the country to bear a real name of a studio, discovered Carnival and made its first sound film in the form of a semi-documentary entitled A Voz do Carnaval, Ademar Gonzaga, directed by Ademar Gonzaga and Humberto Mauro, 1933, The Voice of Carnival, launching a release strategy that for the next 2 decades would prove to be very successful. That is, the release of the film carefully planned to coincide with the carnival festivities, depicting documentary sequences of parades, confetti battles, and revelries of all sorts and groups, dancing and partying. These documentary sequences were interspersed with a fictitious plot line, shot in the studio, including a number with Carmen Miranda, who was already a top-billing radio star, the most successful female singer in Brazil, making her second screen appearance in this film, The Voice of Carnival. This combination of sound and image worked very well, and Cinemídia, either independently or in co-productions, launched a series of musicals that supported the studio and motivated the production of a wide variety of films. Besides the carnivalesque films, Cinemídia also ventured itself in melodramas, costume comedies, literary adaptations, documentaries, and newsreels. But those 2 major successes, Alô Alô Brasil and Alô Alô Carnaval, were instrumental in defining a pioneer aesthetic for the first Brazilian film musicais. Both are the result of a creative use of sound, made possible by the success of Brazilian music and its most famous performers and also technicians. Both testify the importance of radio as a type of salvation and witness the centrality of radio as a kind of salvation, again, and backbone of Brazilian film production in the face of the hegemonic presence of the American film, which was then easily consumed in English thanks to the use of Portuguese subtitles. Displaying in their musical numbers a complete who's who of the first Brazilian radio singers, combined with short humorous sketches, these films and others such as Studentes, 1935, a co-production between Cinemídia and Waldo Films, directed by Wallace Downey, they invariably students, and then also Alô Brasil and Alô Carnaval, they invariably amplified the much smaller size of the radio recording rooms to all the larger stages of the casinos of Rio de Janeiro, nightclubs, and the backstage of regular theaters, naturalizing those sets as always suitable for shooting in studio or for studio shooting. Aside from the creative and cultural strength of Carnival, Cinemídia also made use of other kinds of music, such as romantic tunes or the typical and somewhat folkloric music of mid-year popular Catholic celebrations, the Festas Juninas, June popular festivals. In any event and time of the year, the most visible form of Brazilian sound film was unabashedly transformed into a vehicle for monthly record releases and radio promotions. At a time when radio was beginning to gain wide access to homes and influence and penetrate popular culture in the main spreading urban environments. This first proto-chanchadas obviously found a ready-made cast of actors and performers amongst Brazil's radio stars, whose established appeal and popularity meant huge box office draws. Besides Carmen Miranda, other key names from that early convergence between cinema, radio, and vaudeville were, for example, Miranda's own sister, Aurora Miranda, Mário Reis, Aracy de Almeida, Francisco Alves, as Irmãs Pagan, the Pagan Sisters, among many others, including comedians such as Mesquitinha, Barbosa Júnior, and composers of the status of Alberto Botelho, João de Barro, and Noel Rosa. Of course, the public related to their comic plots, but those films' main appeal, even for today's audiences, whenever Alô Alô Carnaval is shown in semi-restored version, relied on their musical numbers. A veritable constellation of male and female stars from the radio, vaudeville, and the revue theater, the casino stage shows, interpreting songs that became instant classics of Brazilian popular music. Alô Alô Carnaval also introduced the actor Oscarito, a music hall comedian who would go on to become, with Grande Hotel later, the biggest box office attraction at the Atlanta Studios in the late 40s and throughout the 50s. I'd like to show here, just to break a little and to make it something more dynamic, because I know that this becomes, I don't know, anyway, repeating things for audiences that know this story. I'd like to show just a brief sequence of Alô Alô Carnaval, where Carmen sings Querido Adão, de Benedito Lacerda e Osvaldo Santiago. And here I want to talk about two junctions, radio and the stage of the casino, right? In a moment of integration, interdependence, and intermediality, right? And it's interesting to think, I'm going to go back to later to Meu Querido Adão, but it's interesting to pay attention here on elements such as performance, the combination of body movement, eyes, Carmen Miranda, and the lyrics and the song. The way, like Jake Foyer points out and others that study musicals, the way that Carmen Miranda recognizes that she's playing, she's singing, she's performing for an audience that is in front of the cameras. The way that, especially the way that she moves, the way that she has control, and also the way when she moves, the way that she somehow motivates and directs in a way camera movement, right? It's not a good copy, but it's the only one that I could bring here, and John has shown a brief passage of this, the same number right before this time here. So let's put on, oh, it's here. the lights off a little bit?
Por causa da serpente tentadora, o nosso mestre se expulsou do paraíso. Adão, 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 meu querido Adão, todo mundo sabe que perdeste o juízo. Por causa da serpente tentadora, o nosso mestre se expulsou do paraíso. Mas em compensação, o teu pobre coração, que era pobre, pobre, muito pobre de amor, cresceu e eternizou, meu Adão, o teu pecado encantador. Adão, meu querido Adão, todo mundo sabe que perdeste o juízo. Por causa da serpente tentadora, o nosso mestre se expulsou do paraíso. Adão, 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 meu querido Adão, todo mundo sabe que perdeste o juízo. Por causa da serpente tentadora, o nosso mestre se expulsou do paraíso. Mas em compensação, o teu pobre coração, que era pobre, pobre, muito pobre de amor, cresceu e eternizou, meu Adão, o teu pecado encantador.
I could watch Garmin 100 times, so it's always a pleasure to see this and bring those images and sounds to a conference. Of course, the print is very bad, and we noticed that there was an effort on this. This is not it has parts of the original film, but we noticed that there is an artificial way of re-editing this to synchronize somehow with the sound. So one day, hopefully, and I hope soon, we are going to see a restored version of this film. Now I want to develop some arguments and some thoughts from Henry Jenkins from 2009, who explains that any transmedia or intermedial scenario is established when a narrative crosses from one media to another. Here, the music set, it's a marchinha carnavalesca, so we have music plus lyrics and performance, dance, gestures, and body. The music set, this grouping that I mentioned here, as materialized on the stage of what would be a casino, and performed for the movie camera, maintains and extends its continuity in different supports. Another feature of intermediality lies in the relation among different narratives, demanding the necessity that a subject to be able to situate itself in the context of the plot, independently of its original medium. That means narratives need to be constructed independently and unconditioned, free from one another, causing the subject to understand it without necessarily being inserted within the initial context of the narrative. In this way, it is understood that an intermediate narrative is established when new independent means are created. Here, radio, casino stage, recreated in a studio cinema. In the case of Carmen Miranda, it is clear that certain notions theorized by Henry Jenkins and others vis-à-vis contemporary media landscapes of hypermedia journalism, for example, are no longer new, if we can think of them, especially in the relation they launched between music, record industry, and cinema in the first half of last century. Jenkins, now 2010, stresses that the success of here is Jenkins, transmediatic narrative is only effective when the subject has an extended relationship with the object. That is, when the interest in that universe is sustained for a long term and motivates him, her, to consume the contents in a wider spectrum of different media. And we will see here soon, at the end of the selection of clips that I brought here, we're going to see the presence, the permanence, the transformations, the adaptations that Carmen Miranda had until the end of the 50s. We have Cinemídia before here, in 1952, in Carnaval Atlântida, singing Bate-Bulbo Sinfônico. But we're going to see at the end here of this something that I think is very interesting, like this permanence, this presence again, especially these transformations. And that clip will close my brief sequence of clips. Other examples I'm particularly interested in and that have been intriguing me recently help us interrogate the wide relationship of samba with radio, film, and television in a cross-media mirroring. I'm translating myself here for, let's say, espelhamento transmediático, não é intermedial, transmediático, that proposes schemes always centered around and from the cinema. That's the second thing we're going to watch here. Pay attention to the combination or to the workings of cinema, film, radio, and the magazine, the third industry, as Christian Metz would say, the journal, which also had the mediating power of film and an audience through magazine. The magazine here is Revista do Rádio, the radio magazine. And pay attention to that. It's an excerpt of Vitor Lima, Ed Schwab. It's a film from 1958 with very famous circus clown and singer Carequinha, interpreting the carnival marchinha Fanzoca do Rádio for a high society audience, for an elite audience. And here, what I think strikes me also is to see a stylized and simplified version of a tight radio stage decor with the warning sign Silêncio and the ubiquitous fake microphone. And this is within what's supposed to be a party, to be an elegant salon of high class characters. And also, in the same number here, the reflexive recognition of the Revista do Rádio as a mediating prop, it's an object, referred to in the lyrics of the song and visible in the almost surrealist mise-en-scène that we're going to see here, complete with its simultaneous use, as we're doing here, as the simultaneous use of a fun, as a fun, right? It's interesting. The magazine is there, incorporated within the lyrics and also as the prop, the object held by a man. A diegetic audience, here the rich guests of a society party, and also kind of prejudice in one way, and almost like subversive way. deals also with the prejudice against the popular. Brings to the stage, let's say, thematize the prejudice against the popular. When we see the main reason for this, the lyrics, I hope people can understand it, but also the role, for example, of someone that is a hysterical woman here, a fan, a radio fan, which also brings, that's not there, she's white, she's like what we say, maybe a lower middle class woman, an auditorium fan, presented in this dance, in this number. But it's interesting when we think about those radio fans, women radio fans were called macacas de auditorium monkeys, which brings a kind of racial prejudice because of the color of the skin. Here we don't have an Afro-Brazilian woman, but still, when we think about it, I mean, in one way it saved this number, because if she was really what they call them, a macaca de auditorium, I think this number today would read as very offensive. But it's very interesting at the same time. But another thing that I think is interesting in this number here is the trope of, again, the popular invading the space of the elite. So let's watch it.
Outra baixaria, o dia inteiro ela não faz nada. Enquanto eu, na minha casa, ninguém arranja uma pegada. Outra baixaria, o dia inteiro ela não faz nada. Enquanto eu, na minha casa, ninguém arranja uma pegada. Ela é banda e minha, sai do céu, grito o nome do Gaulinho, e depois desmaiado. Pega a revista dourada e começa. É uma letra aqui, outra letra ali, o dia inteiro ela não faz nada. Enquanto eu, na minha casa, ninguém arranja uma pegada. Você tá nisso. Que isso? Mano.
Lights on, please. Luz. Now let's watch Cinema and Cinema. It's a number that's very dear to me, this number here. I've written about it in several occasions actually, and in other times, and I just wish Arthur Altran is here. Arthur, I haven't seen Arthur lately, but good. Because I also brought this, because we have Arthur also has written and has an extended appreciation of this number, which I really like very much. Again, why is it here? Because of its reflexivity. Now we are dealing in the intermedial theme, motive of this conference, film with film, cinema with cinema. And it's reflexive in the sense that we have a mental point of view shot. It's not a clear point of view shot, it's a mental point of view shot. They look at the scene, but they imagine things. They actually don't see those things. Very interesting. Also, it's a very good example to talk about between point of view shot and mental point of view shot, or subjective shot, anyway. You have the two studio servants here. And another Brazilian popular carnivalesque, Marchinha, that thematizes, and not the Marchinha, but the sequence, Hollywood hegemonic cinema. It's a parody of carnivalesque, parody, always synonyms, right? Carnivalesque and parody of a version of Helen of Troy with the Brazilian producer called Cecílio P. Emílio wants to do here, wants to produce here in Brazil with the highest dreams of shooting a version of Helen of Troy in Brazil, but with few or any resources needed for a true blockbuster of epic proportions. So let's watch it. Lights off again, please.
Eu estava fazendo um exame de consciência.
E quem foi que disse que vocês têm consciência?
Olha, doutor Cecílio, eu conheço uma mulatinha que se chama Helena e é forte estandarte da escola de samba do mundo. Mica.
Que barbaridade, essa não é de Troia.
Disse. Mas não sei de Troia, mas que é muito boa, é.
A Helena que eu quero é da mitologia grega. Era a própria imagem da beleza. Não tem nada a ver com o ovo da formiga. Olhem para aquele cenário. Será possível que vocês não sintam a sua grandiosidade? Já estou vendo Helena de Troia sendo servida pelos seus fiéis criados.
Eu não vejo nada disso. Nem eu. Isso tem que ser uma coisa mais chacoalhada, mais movimentada. O senhor quer ver como é que nós caminhamos na cena? Mas olha lá.
Ai, dona Cegonha, saiu de Tóquio pra trabalhar. Voltou danada, encabulada, com a cegonha, ninguém quer nada. Ai, ai, ai.
Ai, dona cegonha, saiu de Tóquio pra trabalhar. Voltou danada, encabulada, com a cegonha, ninguém quer nada. Ai, ai, ai.
Ela trabalhava noite e dia, não encalhava, mercadoria, mas na carecita medonha, ninguém quer nada, cegonha. Ai, dona cegonha, saiu de Tóquio pra trabalhar. Voltou danada, encabulada, com a cegonha, ninguém quer nada.
Não sei ainda como estou perdendo tempo com vocês. Continuam na faxina.
Não sei por que ninguém compreende nosso talento. Os grandes gênios são sempre uns incompreendidos.
Now we're talking about, I'm going to show the last passage I want to show here, and I think we'll have to end. Is cinema, okay, always cinema, the radio and the music industry and television in the same film. And the film, and I have two excerpts here from Quem Roubou Meu Samba? Who Stole My Samba? 1959 by José Carlos Burli, which has as a theme, brings the theme related to the exploitation by the record industry in the radio already touched in 1957 by Nelson Pereira dos Santos in Rio Zona Norte, the exploitation of popular lyricists from favela, from the periferias of Rio de Janeiro. It strikes me when I first saw this many years ago, and now lately watching it again and again within this intermediality framework that we're dealing with, is again the reflexive, how the film thematizes to the spectator these questions, the cross-media references here, the credits, thematizing and showing the mechanical production of a record, with the credits listing, the whole credit sequence is within, that it shows the spectator, the product film showing the production of the record. Again, this is 1959. It's interesting that we are at the approaching the end of this period. And the credits listing all the musical numbers of the film. So let's watch this. We don't have to turn off the lights, that's okay. And in this film, finally, the passage from cinema to television being staged again in front of the viewer. Here, as opposed to the film-to-film relationship of an imagined and desired point of view, as we saw in Carnaval Atlântida, we have two spectators standing in front of the television, in front of the television set, and an amazing cut from the TV screen to the cinema screen. A natural passage from television to cinema, or moving backwards from cinema to television. Also, that's what we see. Literally giving away what has been until then one of its main successful assets to hold Brazilian audiences attached to Brazilian cinema. As if cinema, Brazilian cinema at that moment, the late 50s, is really giving away, entregando de bandeja, as I would say, I cannot translate this quickly, giving away chanchada, giving away this tradition to television. Somehow delivering that tradition to the new medium of TV as a kind, again, of tradition and inheritance. The record company that we saw written at the end of the credit sequence trying to use the television not only for the promotion of its product, the record, as cinema had done in the previous 2 decades, but also for the development of new consuming desires in music and also new audiences. So I think it's like 5 to 6. I had more theory, I think, to talk about, but I think I'll have to end. I'll have to cut away things and let's watch this. It's very interesting to see. One thing that strikes me on this is also the reflexive comment between film and television in this passage. Is things that I've been thinking, for example, in a movie theater, audiences are sitting in their seats, right? Here to watch television, you can watch it standing. This is one thing that has a kind of comment. I think there are parallel comments coming here. And although film is giving away this tradition to television, there is an ironic comment here, because what we'll see in the cut, here we have the framing of the television. It's a small image. When there is the cut, we come back to a wider screen than the smaller one of the television. It's as if cinema, although it's giving away this tradition, is also stating that we somehow are better. We still can give, can provide, can construct a better, bigger image. So let's watch this, and then I think I will close with just one paragraph, and I hope we can discuss some. That's Marion, a personification of Carmen Miranda, 1959. In this last clip, just finished, in this last clip we saw here, in that relationship of Marion, the singer, and Carmen Miranda. Carmen Miranda had died 4 years before this film was made. So the memory again of Carmen Miranda has always been present. It's very much part of that moment. In that memory, in Quem Roubou Meu Samba, the process of moving from the samba-centered television to the television privileged a traditionally successful form of representation, more conservative, traditional, emphasizing the spectacle of entertainment. That is far from the trumpets that, as early as 1957, announced a new cinema, Cinema Novo, more radically political and distant from the chanchada according to the meanings present in the role and function of the samba represented by Nelson Pereira dos Santos in Rio Zona Norte. This theme that I've just outlined briefly here at this end has been treated with special attention by our colleague Lisa Shaw in her excellent text published in the magazine Ao Seu in 2007. I can give references to this if you don't know. It's a very nice analysis of Quem Roubou Meu Samba from this point of view of the samba and comparing with Rio Zona Norte. It's very good. But I mean, again, this is another question that certainly deserves new developments in a new center. So thank you very much. Obrigado.
I think we have a few minutes to some questions.
We only have this one, so I guess if you guys want to ask a question.
Well, actually, I want to continue the discussion we had before, and I want to ask you, João, almost as a supervisor, what path to research would you point out to us? You already mentioned the problematic approach of authors in terms of studying chanchada and film musicals. Now you've made these connections. Cinema and radio, cinema, casino, and journalism. Also in your abstract, there's this, you highlight the importance of the venues, casinos, nightclubs. So I'd like that you could tell us more about this methodological approach to study chanchada and film musical.
This is a very good question, because I was thinking right after we came from this very nice session before here, the one that we had Vlad and John. I was thinking that, and Susanna, I was thinking that perhaps it would be interesting if we do have time, but I don't think we will, because we have all this, everything is carefully planned, very well planned. But I think that one good thing about a center like this is that we should really sit and answer the kind of question that you mentioned here, but in a group of really interested scholars on this. What do we do after this amazing richness of ideas? And now now answering, one thing that is in my mind, for example, is that this was the theme of this seminar, intermediality, right? How do we approach chanchadas through that trope, that theme? I think we are at a moment, and almost all of these presentations here, including partly mine also, aims at identifying first the concept of intermediality. I think we should really study more, really go through, go to Jenkins and go to, people that wrote, for example, I'm talking about transmediality, and I'm incorporating, let's say, Gérard Genet's intertextuality definitions when he talks about, especially he's talking about literature. He has all that taxonomy of intertextuality, right? But we have already gone through over intertextuality to develop, this is not new, the concept of transtextuality. So we are at a moment here when we are identifying, and the presentations here did this, like what's this intermediality thing? Film with this, and that. Talk about radio, record industry, theater, stage reviews, the circus, which nobody, or just briefly talked about. For example, Caraquinha here on this sequence brings a circus kind of idea or theme so that we can go deep into. Oscarito, if we select some of Oscarito's performances in many of his musical numbers, we can exactly point out where it's almost like a kind of Buster Keaton Chapman sort of thing. Where do we recognize his formation? What does Oscarito brings from the circus to the chanchada? It's really going to analyzing deeply. So we are at the moment of recognizing things, but we have to go beyond this and ask the questions for us. For example, what's the meaning? We always, and I include myself into this kind of revision. We easily said in many essays and in our historiography of chanchada that chanchada, wrongly, chanchada ended at the late 50s. We talk about Cinema Novo, and then the context of chanchada were migrated to television. Very easy to say this, and we kept repeating these things. I think that through this intermediality notion that's been very, very nice, very rich, that's being brought to this conference, that will help us go into more kind of more vertical analysis, studies, and with the real films, with what we have left over of these films, what we have left from this tradition. This passage that I have here, which I think is a mise-en-scène, really brings that passage in one way, is encenada, is rehearsed, staged for us, staged in the film, right? What's the meaning of this in 1959? What's the relationship between television and film that we see? This ironic comment that I think that I saw in this, when film itself makes us compare image sizes, for example, and frames. I think it tells so much about this tense relationships between film and television at that time. What do we make of those things? So I think that from here, from this group or whatever, some people that are studying this, if we revise our knowledge of chanchadas and open up, intermediality is one trope, but we have others that we can go and revise. I think we'll be rewriting a new history of this genre, which I still consider this the only Brazilian film genre who have produced so far. Is that okay? It's a proposition for this seminar, actually.
Bom, tô aqui com 1000 perguntas. Foi? Agora?
Foi?
Foi.
1000 perguntas aqui, mas, né, a partir dessa apresentação, eu estou com 1000 perguntas a partir dessa apresentação, fiquei muito contente, mas eu vou aqui escolher um comentário que essa cena no Carnaval Atlântida, quando eles imaginam um número, a partir desse ponto de vista mental, sempre me intriga que não apareça a Helena porta-estandarte do Morro da Formiga e que ela não apareça no filme todo. Eu sempre fico muito intrigada com isso, imaginando o que é, né? Bom, talvez eu esteja influenciada por um curta do André Sampaio, que eu vi uma vez, em que ele inverte a mise-en-scène desse tipo de número musical. Conhece esse curta? E coloca as Elianas atrás e uma porta-estandarte do Morro da Formiga à frente, né? Mas esse é um comentário que eu gostaria mesmo de perguntar. No livro de entrevistas lançado pela professora Lúcia, a chanchada é reivindicada, aparece na fala de vários cineastas como uma tradição, uma herança que pode ser reivindicada. E quando foi colocada essa questão da utopia, de uma dimensão utópica da chanchada, eu fico imaginando se este momento já pós-golpe, né, olhar para trás e poder reivindicar a chanchada como uma tradição, enfim, fico pensando o que é isso, né? Um comentário sobre um desencontro histórico.
Não, esse é um comentário, essa é uma hipótese, né, que você está prevendo aí no futuro. Eu sei muito responder isso, porque são coisas de hipóteses. O que a gente pode perguntar quer dizer, tem essa neo-chanchada, tem essa globo-chanchada, que é outra coisa, né, que se fala, inclusive a questão toda da música não passa por essa globo-chanchada, por essa neo-chanchada, or whatever. Mas o que eu acho que é interessante é há lugar para isso. Eu me pergunto, será que teriam essa recuperação? Que recuperação seria essa hoje, com o negócio de música popular? O que seria isso? Seria, como é que é? Sertanejo, brega, universitário, né? Umas coisas. Seria algo por aí? Seria esses ritmos, nossa, sabe? A música também vai. O que você faria com isso? Entende? Na música? Eu não sei responder. Não sei se tem lugar, por exemplo, se a gente pensar, eu estava comentando hoje sobre o chateau, entendeu? O chateau, às vezes, aqui e ali, às vezes quer encenar uma chanchada. Eu só vi uma vez e não gostei muito, não gostei do filme. O que me incomodou muito foi, aí tem um pouco uma coisa que pode ser pensada junto com chanchada, que é o papel da alegoria. Que sentido faz você trazer um cinema alegórico? Não estou pensando hoje pós-golpe, não. Talvez hoje, infelizmente, se hipóteses, né, se a coisa realmente recrudescer e a gente entrar num período pesado de censura, não sei, de censura, pode ser que de repente a alegoria seja restaurada, reciclada, entende? Mas o chateau foi feito num outro, entendeu? Durante 10 anos, num outro momento que não é esse momento trágico, né, que a gente está vivendo, experimentando agora. E aí ficaria a pergunta, quando eu vi chateau, qual é o sentido de resgatar ou reciclar as estruturas de alegoria? Entende? Uma alegoria que é algo que me incomodou muito no chateau, entende? Achei meio sem propósito, não sei, minha opinião, tá? Achei meio sem propósito, mas eu acho que são questões em aberto que se colocam, tá? Pensando numa revaloração, né, da revalorização da chanchada e o que seria ela hoje. É difícil, né, você fazer essas comparações. Sobre a Helena, eu acho que ela não precisa aparecer ali, não faz sentido a Helena aparecer ali. A coisa é toda imaginária, sabe? Tá o carnaval. Eu acho que, por exemplo, o colé sai fora, o colé não entra. Fica o blackout e quem entra, quem se vê, isso é interessante. Você não tem a Helena a neguinha simpática, que é muito boa, não sei o quê, mas você tem um Otelo dentro daquilo ali, entendeu? É interessante. Você vê ele se vendo, não tem a Helena do Morro da Formiga, mas tem o Grande Otelo. Pode ser um substituto, sabe, para a Helena do Morro da Formiga. Mas está ele ali tropeçando naquelas vestes de grego, de um negócio que não tem nada a ver com ele. Aí traz comentários também mais interessantes sobre essa sequência, que eu acho que é muito rica, sempre muito rica e de inesgotável, enfim, análise, revisão. Eu queria provocar, eu queria ouvir o Arthur, que está lá atrás, eu queria que ele comentasse. E tem muito, não, estou te provocando. Não, eu apontando assim, você, entendeu? Mas não precisa, se não quiser. Tem uma pergunta. A Lúcia aqui. Última. 6h15.
Hello. Just to go back to English so that colleagues can understand.
I can translate them later. I can translate what was the
That
question.
very interesting discussion here. I think there was a question about how we can reevaluate the chanchada that has been so important to the history of Brazilian cinema, but wasn't recognized perhaps from cinema global onwards that established that kind of rivalry between popular and art cinema in Brazil. But the purpose of our project, the Intermediate project, in trying to rewrite the history of the national cinema through the Intermedial method is to do with evaluating the other arts that combine there, the other arts and media. For example, if you look at the chanchada as a film only, probably you come to the conclusion that most of them are extremely mediocre and that they are simplistic, that they don't, as a film, they might lose the range to American cinema or other cinemas in the world. Once you pay attention to the music, things start changing completely. The music that's there is just wonderful, and I was so pleased to see that example that Susana showed to us today of Nestor Amaral, when he's singing alone. We have the syncopated rhythm of the samba. Once it moves, where is Susana? Just to see if I'm not saying anything stupid. When it moves to the general singing of the samba, they turn it to a march and very hard without the syncopated, and that's so characteristic of the samba and makes it a very genuine and original rhythm of Brazil, so to say. So it's extremely interesting for us to study the vaudeville inside those things and acknowledge the nativeness of those actresses as coming straight from that theater. All these gains another importance within the film if we see that in conjunction with each other, in connection with each other. So that's the purpose, at least when asked with the Intermediate group put together this bid for the AHRC and FAPESP. The intention was to try and look to the history of any cinemas, Brazil as the main case study, with a view to incorporating the knowledge of these other art forms that are interwoven within both the story and the form of each of those films. So looking at the paintings that are being made there, how are they made, what do they represent, what tradition do they have behind them, what are the songs that are sung. And it's so interesting to see you guys kind of dissecting all these treasures that are behind that. The circuits, it's fabulous. It's, you know, Carequinha, I remember as a child his appearances on TV. And so if we tell the story of that character, if that will throw a new light on the kind of cinema that we are seeing. But if we sit down there and just look at the camera position, blah, blah, within an exclusive film studies perspective, we will be missing the most interesting aspects of those films, I think. Not that they are not important, they are very important, but they need to be seen in combination with all the article, as you said, and so key within Pacific culture. If we don't understand the role of carnival within those films, we are missing the most important thing.
Right.
So that's all I wanted to
No, I tend to agree with you. Yeah. The only thing that I think is that we are not doing this, I think, here to reevaluate, to create categories of, let's say, re-essentializing attention and create like a kind of pantheon of what would be the best attention shot. No, I think we should get away from this. This is not the purpose of something that you set as a horizon within the research. So I agree entirely with you in that sense, that we really have to open up to really and try to revise our own essentializing history, historiographic and history written that we did write about Chanchada. That's something. The other thing that I think I would add to this seminary here, since we have England, in this sense, the UK, I would say let's talk about the UK. I was talking to Jan yesterday about, since he was not here, I wish he could be. He asked me to summarize somehow what I said here in an hour and 15 minutes. I told him 5 minutes. Very compressed. But then we started talking. Something that I really liked was, like, again, comparative studies. Of course, we're not going to look into UK Carnival. It's not this. But we can talk about...
In our next conference, it isn't all about that.
Why not? But anyway, but we can talk about music, the role of music, comedy, and structures of comedy that goes beyond Chanchada and beyond Brazilian cinema. So there are links that could also be brought within the perspective of this, can I call transnational seminar, right? And that would be very productive also for a future project, or that would be really wonderful if we would do this.
I'm afraid we don't have more time, so I thank João Luiz for this.